Welcome to the Stutzman 52 channel. Today we got a 2016 Ford Escape with a 2-liter engine, and we're going to be checking the brake fluid. So we're going to be doing two tests on here. We're going to be checking to see how corrosive it is, and also we're going to be looking at the boiling point temperature, and based on those tests we probably will be doing a brake flush. Alright, let's get to it. Okay, so I'm using Phoenix Systems test strips here. One side of the strip you can see is for the brake fluid, and then the other side is for checking the coolant. So for right now we're just going to be looking at doing the brake fluid. So we dip it in there. We're going to shake off the excess, and then we're going to take it and we're going to put it over here, and then we're going to wait 30 seconds. I want to make a correction on that. It's not 30 seconds. We wait 90 seconds. So at the end of 90 seconds, we'll see what our results are. So as you can see from this test, it looks like we are hitting 100 parts per million. So we are right under 200 to where it says it needs to be replaced. So we're going to go ahead, based on what we see right now, is we're going to go ahead and change this brake fluid. Also, let's do the boiling point test just to see what we got on that. So this is the brake fluid boiling point tester that we're going to use. It's made by All-Tool. The part number is AS506. It comes with a little case. We open it up. We can see we got a user manual. Tells you how to use it. And you can see here's the tester. You're going to connect this to your battery on the car. Red to positive and black to negative. Here's our syringe. It also comes with a little tube. Pull it out. So you can see there's a tube. You hook that on. We're going to get some brake fluid out of the reservoir. And then we also come with two beakers. We have a glass beaker. It's 50 milliliters. And that's what we're going to put extract for the brake fluid out of the reservoir for the test. And it also comes with a plastic reservoir also.
Now why
I mean a plastic beaker.
Why one plastic and one glass?
I'm not sure. I think probably maybe one is for doing your brake fluid, maybe the other one is for cleaning, you know. This one here is maybe to clean the brake fluid with the water.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's really important. I'm probably just use it for both, you know, testing and for the water. Anyway, we'll show all that coming up. So let's put all this back. And let's get going. Let's do the test. Alright, so the first thing we got to do is we got to extract some of this brake fluid. I am going to pull in, like it says, from 45 to like 50. And it looks pretty brown, don't it?
Yeah, it does. Looks nasty.
Okay, that should be enough. Now let's put it in here.
Okay.
All right, there we go. Now also you can see it's graduated, so we have 50 milliliters here. Okay. And what it will do is it's going to be connecting to your battery. Of course, the red connector here, or the red alligator clip, is going to go to the positive, and I'm just got it over here on the frame for the ground, which goes directly to the negative side of the battery. Now there's two buttons on here. One is for making a selection, and also for our test purposes of heating up this here brake fluid. This one over here is a T, which is a tab. And this is the first time I'm using this, so it should be like a T here. It's hard to see, but over here is an S. Okay, so we can select a normal mode, or we can select it by the brand. There is no, the brand that fluid that I'm using is not in here, so I'm just going to use a normal mode. So I'm going to make the selection by pressing this button. Now we're having .4, so I'm going to tab over to .4. I'm going to press the set button. Now when it comes up, you can see it's going to have the dry boiling point, which is 230 degrees Celsius. and it also has a wet boiling point, which is 150. Now, the wet boiling point at 150 degrees C is going to be when the moisture content in here is at 3.7%. By that time, it's considered saturated, and you definitely need to be changing the fluid. So anything that's going to come under 150 is going to be pretty bad, right? So the higher this here boiling point, the better. So this is what we're going to be doing. So now we're going to take this and we're going to put it down inside of this here little beaker, and you can see that there's the bubbles coming out. So we wait for that to stop, and now I'm going to hold this here set button in while it heats up this fluid to see what the boiling point is. So we're holding it in, and you can see the little Celsius 100, 120, 140, 150, 178. Yeah, it's dropping back down.
Yeah.
So, our temperature on this here brake fluid is 182 C, which is actually pretty good. Oh, and by the way, this up here, you can see it also shows the battery voltage, 12.3 volts. So 182 degrees Celsius. But based on what the corrosiveness of the test was, we're right there at it. So I think we should still go ahead and we're going to change this here brake fluid, get it flushed out. Now after you get through with this test, the instructions say, you know, to wipe off the excess of the brake fluid. And you do not pour that back into here because this has already been changed. We've changed characteristics by sitting here and boiling this here fluid. So we're going to discard it. Now after I poured out the brake fluid, I am just cleaning out the brake fluid, just taking a paper towel, just cleaning it out. And now what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to fill this up, 50 milliliters of water, and then I'm going to stick the tool back in there, and we're going to boil the water, and then that will kind of help clean this here heater and the sensor, you know, the brake fluid that's already up inside the unit. So let me get some water and I'll put it in there. Okay, so I have the 50 milliliters of water. I am putting this down inside. You see a few bubbles, so we want to make sure they're out. So we want to go back. I hit the tab key. We'll come back to the home screen. So I'm going to do the normal, and it doesn't really matter which one we're doing because all we're going to do is just boil this water. Hopefully this water will come as boiling as 100 degrees Celsius. I'm just going to use .4 just like I did. Okay, and now let's let her rip. (100 degrees C, right? That's the boiling point of water. Let's just see what it comes up with. This helps, like I said, it helps clean this thing off too. Okay, 97 degrees Celsius. Looks okay to me. And I think I'm going to do it one more time. So I'm going to empty this, dry it out, more water, and then at that point I'm going to say this here is pretty clean as far as in brake fluid. What we're actually doing is we're seeing what kind of moisture content is in the brake fluid, because you know brake fluid is hygroscopic, so it's going to absorb moisture from the air. The more moisture it gets, then the worse your braking is going to be. And they say after 2% moisture content, then that's when we should be changing the brake fluid. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll try to find a chart and relate it to the moisture content versus the temperature, boiling point temperature of brake fluid. See what kind of moisture content we actually have in here. Okay, I found us a chart here. Covers .34 5.1. As you know, we're using .4, which is going to be this line right here. It's the second line up from the bottom. Anyway, we look over here to the left, and if you remember, our boiling point was 187 degrees Celsius. So if we go between 175 and 200, that'll give us 187.5. So let's just go right in between here, and imagine that right here we're going to draw a line straight across until we intersect this other line right there, it looks like. Now if we come straight down, you can see that it looks like that we're actually a little less than 1.25% in water absorption, which is pretty good. So it says that our brake fluid is okay. Now, if we go over here, you can see that 2%, as I mentioned earlier, if you hit 2% or above, they recommend that you replace it. But in any event, the reason that some of you may not know is there's more moisture that gets into the system, then the lower the boiling point. So then what happens is the brake fluid is not compressible, but we have this here moisture in there. So then this moisture can be a gas, and then this gas is going to boil at a lower temperature, and then what's going to happen is you're going to have a vapor lock, and then you're going to basically you're going to see that your braking is going to be less than what it should be. In fact, if it gets too bad, you can actually have a weak pedal. In other words, it'll just go right on down to the floor if it gets too hot, you know, in a panic situation where you need the braking. In any event, let me get this thing jacked up so we can go ahead and see if we can loosen up these brake fittings so we can start to bleed this here and get this stuff flushed out of here. Let's catch you in the next shot.
Wait. So I can blame it on that instead of my heavy foot.
Yeah.
Thank
Exactly.
you. Thank you.
Exactly.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, I got the car jacked up all the way around, 4 jack stands, got the wheels pulled off, made sure that I could loosen up these bleeder valves, you know, before we actually try to bleed this brake fluid. Now I'm going to be using a Branick G300 brake fluid bleeder. Here's the exploded view. You got a lower dome, you got an upper dome, you fill your fluid in through here. It's got a pressure regulator. You can adjust it to what you want, 60 psi max. And then this right here is a rubber diaphragm. You can see it looks like a bowl. So what'll happen is that your regulated air pressure that you set, the air is going to come down here to the bottom, and it's going to push up on this here bladder, and the brake fluid is inside here. So it's going to push up, and then the brake fluid is going to come out and go into the master cylinder. Now one of the things that it said here, a lot of them, you know, they'll say the brake fluid bleeder will tell you to remove as much of the fluid out of the master cylinder. Now in this case, what they want you to do is they want you to fill it up to the max level or 1/2 inch from the upper rim. So I've already topped this off, so we're about 1/2 inch from the top up here. Okay. Now let's go over to the brake bleeder. Now the brake bleeder has got a 4 gallon capacity. Now what I'm going to be using is what this here vehicle calls for. It's Motorcraft .4 low viscosity high performance brake fluid. Now I've already put 2 in here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a 3 in here. I'm going to put in 3 quarts. I'm taking just a little bit of brake fluid. This here's got an O-ring, so I'm just kind of want to, and it's pretty dry, so I'm just going to just wipe a little bit of brake fluid around this O-ring, kind of lubricate it. Okay, now we take this here, and then we just screw it on down. Okay, and just hand tight. Okay, now here's the bleeder valve. You can see that it's off. There's another valve. This is for the air. So the air comes in here, goes through the regulator, goes through this here valve, and then it goes to the bottom. And by the way, on the very bottom of this unit, you can see it has an air relief valve. So at the pressure, I guess, if it gets over 60 psi, which is just the maximum rating, Then it'll relieve the air pressure. Alright, so let's plug it up. Now, to adjust the regulator, there's a knob. You pull down on it. Counterclockwise decreases the pressure. Clockwise increases the pressure. So I'm going to kind of back off on it a little bit. I'm going to slowly open this here. As you notice here, you can see that the pressure is coming up. We're around about 15 psi. Okay, I'm going to fully open the valve. Now I'm going to increase the pressure. And now I'll show you in the service manual what this car calls for in bleeding. Okay, let's take a look at all data and see what it takes to do this brake fluid flush. Okay, so it's going to be pressure bleeding. Okay, wipe off the cap, use the correct brake fluid. Come it on down, let's see, use the correct adapter. Now here's the most important thing right here. You're going to be applying 30 to 50 psi. Okay. Okay, it's in neutral, jack it up, and as typical, you're going to be doing the right rear, then the left rear, right front, then the left front. Okay. Anything else here? Now if you got rear integral parking brake calipers, they want you to apply and release the parking brake 5 times, loosen the bleeder screw, loosen 180 degrees, leave it until that clear fluid comes out. Okay. And then when you get done, it looks like you're going to put it to the correct level and then put your cap on. Okay, but the biggest thing here is the 30 to 50 psi. If you want to maintain the air pressure, just keep the air supply here hooked up. But you can also, what you can do is you can close the valve off and then you can disconnect the air line and then you can wheel this around to wherever you want to go. But I'm going to keep the air supply hooked up. Okay, so now we have that. Now let's go over here. Now this is the bleeder valve assembly, so this is going to purge any air that might be in, in the brake fluid. So we come back over to here, and we're going to slowly open this valve. Now I have this here valve closed off right now, and I'm going to fully open it. And then I'm going to come over here, and then I'm just going to open this valve up and see if we can get any kind of fluid. You can hear some air coming out. Hopefully we'll get some brake fluid coming out of this thing. That ain't looking good, is it?
Oh, here it comes.
Alright, so that gets the air out. Now here's one thing that I found out about this tool. You remember I put 3 quarts in there? Well, it turns out that 3 quarts is not enough to get this thing to work. In other words, to get the brake fluid out. So I did call the guy up and said, what is the minimum capacity? He said he would try for a 1 gallon. So I went ahead and I put 2 more quarts in it. So now we got 5 quarts of brake fluid in there. And now you can see that it purges okay. I wish you could have it where it didn't have to have so much brake fluid in this system, in this unit, before you can actually get it to work. And what happens is that if you don't have enough brake fluid, where I had 3 quarts, and you open this up and you saw where the air was coming out, well then what will happen is the air will start bleeding off of this and it'll go right down to 0. And then you got to take it off, take the fuel cap off, and then you got to get a handle and push that bladder all the way back down, and then that's when I put 2 more quarts in there, and now it seems to be working. Anyway, live and learn. Like I said, this is the first time I've used this tool. All right, let's get to the next step. So since we got this blade here, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to disconnect it. Yeah, I'm gonna just lay that in there. All right, let's move on. I'm going to take our filler cap off, and I'm using a Power Probe adapter. Here's a BA05. You can see that it swivels. And we just connect that right onto the adapter. And then slowly we're going to open this valve. Checking for leaks. Everything looks good to me. And we got around 15 psi. Now remember, I told you it was 30 to 50 psi. So right now I'm just going to turn it up just a little bit. We get around 15. Now let's just see if we can bleed these brakes on the back. Well, let's go to the right rear. Crack the bleeder valve, and you can see it came out a little bit, and then it's kind of stopped.
Okay.
So I'm going to go and I'm going to crank up the pressure, because like I mentioned earlier, the service manual says 30 to 50 psi. Alright, so now I've turned it up to 30, so now you can see that it's starting to move. Looks like we got some bubbles in there.
Yeah.
So we're going to let this go for a little bit, and I'll catch you back, guys, in the next shot. So you can see it's coming out pretty clear.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, I've just got through changing the brake fluid, flushing it out. Alright, just curious. Just doing another test here. Alright, so there's our test right there. And it is a little less than 10, so I don't know, maybe 5. So I'm happy with that. So that looks pretty good to me. You know, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this here strips is also can check your coolant. So I'm going ahead and show you that. So mine is 60% for the freeze boil point, which is good. And we're looking down here on the green. It looks like it's on a 9, so we're good on that. So we don't have to worry about the coolant. Alright, so as you can see, it's improved where it was 187 and now it's 217. Okay, so you see I've changed into some nicer clothes, took a shower, had a little bit of time to think about this here brake bleeder tool and what my thoughts are. Okay, first thing you might be wondering is, what is the cost of this here tool? Alright, well, let's go to the website and we'll show you. We're going to go to Branick's first, and then we'll look at Amazon. So if you go to Branick's website, this here G300, this joker is $630. Now if you go over to Amazon, you just want to say $500. And in my, you know, it's a pretty expensive piece of equipment. I don't know about you, but I did not pay that much for this tool. Now at the time I think I paid about $280, $290, and this was like a couple of years ago, maybe even a little bit longer. But $630? Do I recommend it for the DIY? Absolutely not. And first of all, the cost, even with Amazon's price of $500, that's still just way too much when you're not doing brake fluid flushes that often. You know, every 2 years was what they recommend. Okay, so here's the thing about it. This thing has a 4-gallon capacity. Now, would it be good for a shop? Yeah, I think so. If you take a shop and let's say it's got 4 or 5 bays, and you know, and they're upselling, you know, brake fluid flush, you know, just about all these cars coming in, you know, if they're a couple of years old, you know, it's time for a brake fluid flush. So yeah, so they can just sit there, hell, they could fill this thing up with 4 gallons and, you know, no problem. Or take like Firestone, where you got what, 6, 7, 8 bays. They like to upsell stuff. That would be great for them. But for a DIY guy, no, not at all. Not at all. And here's the thing. What if you got a professional shop and you only got one bay? You know, a real small guy, he's working by himself. What are you going to do with this brake fluid? This brake fluid is in this side of this unit. So you're going to take it, most of the time I think what they'll do is just going to keep it in there. So it could be in there 6 months, a year, depending on how often you're going to get a brake flush, you know. So anyway, you got some fluid in there. And I would say this thing is not 100% airtight. But so you got to worry about that too. Now the other thing is, I had to wind up putting 2.5 gallons of brake fluid in this thing to complete this here job. So, you know, I started out with an amount that I thought would take care of the flush, but then I had to go back and buy some more brake fluid. And now, you know, I'm over $200 in brake fluid to use this tool. And then to go through the whole process, I had to crank it up to 40 psi to actually, you know, to get the fluid to move. However, on 2 of them, on the right rear and the right front, you know, it would start even at 40 psi. It would start, go about halfway down the tube, and then it would stop. So I had to wind up actually doing the, you know, the old brake. Get the wife in there, press on the brake, I break the bleeder screwed, fluid comes out, and you had to repeat that several times to kind of get this flushed out on 2 of these here. So, yeah, I wasn't real happy with the tool. And like I said, and I still got this brake fluid in there. So now I'm debating, you know, couple of years, ain't no telling what kind of condition. So what I do I try to flush it out, try to put it back into bottles. Anyway. So a couple of years ago, I used a motive, all right? The motive was okay, but most of it is for 10 to 15 psi. Well, that didn't work, and I even cranked it up to 30 psi. And that was, you know, did okay, but I still had to go back and do the manual, you know, with the brake, you know. Wife gets in there, because the pressure wasn't quite enough. So when I saw this one's going to be 60 psi, and it's got the diaphragm, I thought, okay, that'd be pretty good. Let's try it out. Like I said, it was my first time. If I had to buy it over again, no, I wouldn't buy it. Now, I would not, like I said, I would not recommend it to a DIY. You know, and they have these ones now that's got a rubber diaphragm, and they have, you know, they're smaller. I saw one guy on there, and he's talking about the adapters leaking. There's all air in the line, so I guess from Chinese, what do you expect? You know, $150 for it. So anyway, that was an experience. So that's about all I can think of. So anyway, live and learn, right? So you guys take care. Hope you learned something on the video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.